So for a while now, Skull and Bones has had some pretty negative PR, and this has gotten worse as we plunged into the beta this past weekend. There have been a lot of content creators and other people on the internet really hating on this game lately, and rightfully so. They were overpromised on something, and Ubisoft definitely underdelivered on that promise. And listen, I get it. If I had been paying attention to the game for the last 5 years, I think I would have been pretty upset as well. I mean, these people have been following Skull and Bones for every single update and were fed lies each time something was revealed. So I don't blame them, but I just have to say that as someone who's kind of new to the game and new to the whole drama, I've enjoyed my experience. I think that maybe some of these creators and content warriors on the internet might have had blinders on that morphed their first impressions, that is creating a negative stigma against the game that, while yes, is missing some of the core content features, I will give them this point, is still a good time and isn't this massive disappointment that they would have you believe. And listen, I can see you right now. If you're one of the people who disagree with me on this, who are currently running to the comments to hate on me, just let me explain myself. Now, in the past week, I've done a bit of research. I've watched probably 20 videos and read about a dozen reviews from big sources like IGN. And from what I can tell, everyone's pretty much saying the same thing. They're all mad that this game is not an extension to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and that the game only has naval combat and pretty much ties you to your boat. Now, a lot of people expected that a studio like Ubisoft, who is known for having some of the best hand-to-hand combat around, would have added that into Skull and Bones. And I will agree with them. There are a lot of times that having some hand-to-hand combat would really elevate this game to the next level. And I think this is a huge opportunity that Ubisoft missed out on. So for example, when you're boarding a ship, it would be really cool to actually board that ship with your character and fight the crew members to overtake it. But instead, we're delivered with a cutscene that just shows the ships colliding. Or another instance where this would have worked really well is when you're pillaging a settlement. In the current game, you just fight the island from your boat. You fight a few waves of enemy ships, take out a few guard towers, and boom, you've captured the island. But how cool would it have been to actually get out of your boat and take on an island in person? And to exaggerate the miss here, Skull and Bones already has the hand-to-hand combat halfway created. What I mean by this is that these settlements already have maps created for them. So if you're not pillaging them and rather just landing there to trade, you can actually get off your boat already and walk around the islands. So it seems like with as many delays this game had, they could have easily put a sword in your hand, copy some code from Assassin's Creed, and boom, there you go, combat created. And then there also was this complaint that the game has gone too far away from a realistic pirate experience, but I don't really understand this one. And like, I get it if you were promised a naval sim, but this is an RPG made in Ubisoft's image. I don't think at any point they led us to believe that we were going to get this hyper-realistic retelling of historically accurate pirates. And I mean, if you really want to get dirty with that, the historical accuracy of naval combat and piracy isn't even what you would see in a fucking like Hollywood movie. So I think this expectation is just a little bit washed up. It's a really good example of how people are pulling straws to shit on Ubisoft as a company just because it's popular to do so. And to keep digging into this a little bit deeper, Ubisoft didn't even really go that far. Like, the biggest step away from historical accuracy is probably like the flamethrower, but it's not like they had wizards shooting magic missiles or a cataclysmic event that you might see in Fortnite. Like, all the weapons in combat are well contained in an environment where none of them really stray too far into fantasy. So I'm just gonna throw this one away because I don't really feel like it's an argument that has any real grounds to stand on. It is underwhelming, however, that back in 2020 we had one of the first looks at the game, and now 2023/24 when it fully releases, we are looking at realistically the same fucking game. And you just have to wonder, like, what have you guys been doing during all these delays? Sitting around on coffee breaks? I don't know, but you definitely weren't working to improve the game. But coming back to hand-to-hand combat, I will 100% agree that yes, this is a huge miss, and an opportunity that I think would have made the game worth all $70. But the real issue I see here is that people are taking this miss, and I guess the inaccuracy of weapons, a little too far, and they're creating this narrative that Skull and Bones is a complete waste of space, when in reality, it really isn't. You just have to take a step back and look at it for what it is. You know, like leave the drama for another conversation. Which I think kind of fuels a lot of the basis for the hate that this game is getting. The fact that Ubisoft as a developer is rather polarizing and does a lot of things that piss people off just makes the smaller things that you don't like in a game much larger. And listen, to anyone who's affected in that way, I just have to say that you're completely valid, and don't support a developer who makes you feel that way. But what I'm trying to do in this video is just kind of put that stuff behind me and just take the game in for what it is. And if I'm not fueled by that resentment, I can see that there are many reasons to enjoy Skull and Bones. And I think there's value in letting a company know where they've done well. Like, for example, the game is really pretty. I think they did an excellent job at creating this Indian Ocean world while filling the stereotypes that a bunch of mangy pirates would have. You'll often find yourself looking up to the sky and seeing very pretty god rays shining all the way down through your sails and then reflecting off the water. And if you're lucky enough to have a graphics card with ray tracing, then this lighting is exacerbated. They also did a really good job with the cosmetics and costumes. I didn't quite get to see everything in my 6 hours of playtime, but from what I could see, everything that was there was really neat. And to add to that, you weren't just able to customize your character, rather you could customize your ship, your pets, and your crew, which is a fun idea. If I was sailing the sea, I would want everyone to match also. Then if we move on to the gameplay side of things, combat on the water, contrary to everyone's complaint, was really fun. There were multiple types of cannons and weapons I could outfit my ship with, and the way that you could just aim in any direction and the side of the ship that you were aiming from would fire whatever was loaded on that side was a really seamless experience. And also the sound design in the game was fucking awesome. When you were sailing, there was always someone yelling something out to you that made sense in game. Like for example, if there was an enemy French ship out in the distance, your co-captain would literally yell out to you that there was someone out there and would point in their real direction. Or if an oncoming ship was about to ram you, your crew would shout out and scream in fear. Or also, when you were walking around the island, the NPCs were having conversations that you could actually understand. So there were a lot of little details like that in the combat and generally everywhere in the game that made it a really immersive experience. There also was a lot for you to do. Rather quickly, in fact, you were introduced to a lot of different kinds of missions and contracts and ongoing trade routes that you could plunder, and even world quests that involve PvP with other real players. So I think that Skull and Bones would probably have some replayability to it, which is a good thing. A huge problem I have with a lot of games in this genre is that once you're done with the main story, you quickly run out of things to do, and it's just on to the next game. Something that also kind of surprised me was the online open world that you have. Usually when I hear that there's another RPG game that's mostly single player, but also co-op if you wanted, I tend to expect that I'm just going to be playing alone. Just me, myself, and maybe a friend in our own little world. But that's not the case. Throughout the whole game, I was always around other players, who I had the option to group with, or kill, depending on how the social experiment planned out. And this really created the illusion that I was almost playing an MMO. And honestly, some of the world quests were taking a lot of inspiration from that genre. I mean, there was literally a quest to go kill a beast that my brother and I went on, which was cool as fuck, by the way. But if it hadn't bugged out, there was no way we would have killed it ourselves. At least at the level we were at, we would have required a lot of help from other players. And sticking on the topic of it almost acting like an MMO, there was an interesting thing I found in the ship builder. If you look closely at the menu here, you can see that there are ships made for DPS, ships made for tanking, and ships made for support, aka healing. So it almost seems like with the 3-player max party size, they're almost encouraging you to roll out in a group prepared with one of each. And that would be a really cool way to play the game, just you and a couple of friends going to become the kingpins of the high seas. So as you can see, the game still has a lot of good things to it, and I think it's really important to highlight those. But there is still the question of if this game is worth its price, and should you give your time to play it. You see, up until this point, you probably haven't been able to figure out what side I'm on. And that's because, honestly, I'm not on anyone's side at all. The more popular side of shitting on Skull and Bones does have valid points, but are so blinded by this anger that they can't see the game for what it is. And on the side of Ubisoft, while they made a decent game, they didn't live up to the promise that they had put out. So I'm kind of like stuck in the middle here. Was the game good? Yeah. Could it have been better? Well, also yeah. So here's the final verdict and stance that I'm on. I think that Skull and Bones for most people will fill out the desire for a new RPG pirate game. And I think it honestly does a really good job at immersing you into this world. If you're someone who is just now hearing about it and have no idea about the drama surrounding this game, you're going to play it and have a damn good time. And I would imagine that you could probably squeak maybe 80 hours into this and still find yourself with something to do. I mean shit, I only played for the allotted 6 hours that was allowed during the beta, and I only found myself with a small ship equipped with 6 cannons. And to my knowledge, there were so many other mechanics to work on that allow for more progression that would take a lot more time. For example, the reputation you have with other pirates that unlock different facets to the game. And I mean, in the intro of the beta, we were playing on a ship that was much more advanced than our own, and even still was smaller than the enemies we were encountering. So to just take a stab at the potential game time, it's probably something like 50 to 60 hours to essentially beat the game and get a maxed out ship. But after that, you have many more hours of content through PvP and world quests to keep you busy. And listen, it's not like GTA 5 levels of busy, but you can for sure get your money's worth in terms of price per hour. But only if you get this game at a price less than $70. Because here's the deal. This game is coming out in 2024 as a AAA title with a AAA price tag with the looks, the graphics, and the depth of a game made in 2015. Like, it's no secret that their previous game that inspired a lot of what we see here, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, was a more up-to-date release at the time that it was released. Like, at the time, the game was really cutting edge and introduced many new features and mechanics that we still see in games today. And honestly, it was worth every penny that we paid for it. Skull and Bones, unfortunately, can't say the same thing. So then, what do I think this game is worth? Well, as it stands, I think that $40 would be a fair price for it. Anything more than that, and you're paying for something that isn't delivering on that price. I mean, the fact remains that the gaming industry had the boat rocked by Baldur's Gate 3, and really changed people's perspective on what they expect from their money. And Skull and Bones is not a Baldur's Gate 3, so in turn, shouldn't cost as much as one. And then add the fact that it's probably going to be on the Game Pass in 6 months, so I think it wouldn't hurt to put it on the shelf until it is. And that's just kind of how it is nowadays. Like, is the game fun? Yeah. Is it worth what the fuck they're charging? Fuck no. Which is another topic for another day. Maybe I'll make a video about that. I don't know, we'll see. But that pretty much wraps up how I feel about it. So that's it. I appreciate all of you who stick around to the end. Let me know what you guys think about Skull and Bones if you played it. Did you enjoy it? Are you gonna buy it? And if you liked the video, then please like it. Thanks for watching. Later.